Hey, Reg Babes, it's Brianne, the host of the Go Regulate Yourself podcast. In replace of today's solo episode, I have a special treat for you. Recently, I was featured on the Lorn of Love podcast called The World Needs Your Medicine, and I had an opportunity to share all about my breast implant journey, what that process was like when I got my original augmentation, and then, of course, the 10 years that followed, the surgeries, the breast implant illness, and eventually the explant that occurred in November of last year. Now, this episode is a really special one to me. It's the first time I've got to go on a bigger platform and share all about this. And I wanted to be able to share this episode directly with you here so that you could take a listen and let me know what you think. So, without further ado, let's dive on in. There is nothing that I can do to be more worthy than I am right now in this moment. Nothing that I can do to be more lovable than I am right now in this moment.
Are you ready for a show that actually shifts you with real, raw, honest conversations about what it takes to become the most embodied version of yourself? And are you ready to remember that the world really does need your medicine? This is the podcast to awaken that. I can hear a calling. Because we all feel our higher self pulling us to our next expansion. But the only way to really get there is by sharing our stories together. So welcome to the World Needs Your Medicine podcast. This is the place where we can have real conversations about the things that have worked for us, the lessons we've learned, the hard struggles along the way, and the things that have shifted us into the versions of ourselves we are now. Here on the show, you'll hear from some of the most incredible guests that have transformed their lives using the exact tools they talk about and offer inside each episode. I'm so honored to share this with you, and I can't wait to dive deeper, because when you see the power of what others have created, you believe you can create it too. And that's all we are really trying to remember, because the world really does need our medicine, and it starts by finding it within yourself. I'm Lauren Eliz Love, and let's dive into the show. Thanks for being here. Hello, beautiful. Welcome back to the World Needs Your Medicine podcast. I hope you're doing well today. I hope your body's feeling good. I woke up this morning and I was checking in with my body. Something I'm starting to do now in my morning practice, like before I roll out of bed, I really want to do, a scan and just kind of feel like what's going on in my body. And I've been really focused on shifting my world to be more body led. I feel like that's going to be another episode later on in the season, just talking about how we can live our life with the prioritization of our body's needs. And just even in saying that, I just feel an exhale, like, oh, how nice. Body led living. My body's tired, I'm going to rest. My body wants to move, I'm going to move. My body wants to have boundaries, I'm going to honor that. My body wants to say no, I'm going to say no. This journey of life, what I have learned about manifestation and the process of bringing what you want closer and closer to you in your world, it really does all come from the body. Truly, unapologetically. That's like the only way to, I wouldn't say it's the only way to get what you want, but I would argue that what you really want, the only way to get that is to be body-led. We want peace, we want freedom, we want ease, and being body prioritizing in our world is just a really important thing to do. And, today's conversation, I'll share with you guys in a minute, is just such a deep, beautiful story of returning to the body. Brianne Roberge is coming on the show to share her story of navigating just a lot of difficulty in her physical vessel with a breast implant journey to a breast explant journey. And even if you aren't in a place where you are having surgery of any kind, there's so much medicine in the show. Like, she drops so many golden nuggets, so many pieces of wisdom that, anybody who's trying to heal their relationship with their body should really hear. So for me in my healing journey of the body right now, I'm, as you may know, if you listen to episode 15 of the World Needs Your Medicine podcast, I've been shifting my business to be more body led. I've been healing my hormonal cycle, really paying attention to ebbs and flows of my hormones. And I just am now on day 4 of a liver cleanse into a liver flush, because I have learned that our liver is very important to our hormone cycle, which I never knew. I knew the liver was so responsible for flushing out toxins and everything that we eat, digest, breathe into the air. All of the stuff that's not meant to be in our body flushes through the liver. But obviously in our world, we can get backed up. We can have a lot of toxic overload. And so I'm doing this cleanse. And, I woke up this morning, I'm scanning my body, like, okay, how do I feel? I'm like, honestly, I feel so smelly. Like, I just feel so smelly, because when you're doing these cleanses, your body is detoxing so much. And my poor husband, I went to go hug him this morning, and he's like, whoa, woof, what is going on? Back up. This is intense. So yeah, my body's cleansing, and it just feels like a really appropriate time to sit down to record this intro, because that's something we really do talk about in this show today, this concept of, what is not meant to be in the body that has to be released. And, piggybacking kind of off this concept of the liver cleanse, for me, I've been clearing a lot of emotions over the last 4 days. There's been a lot of emotional release, a lot of, resurfacing of energies and feelings that have maybe been trapped. The liver processes all of our emotion. And when you hear Brianne talk about her journey of her emotional relationship to her body and the process of getting implants and then going on a crazy journey of trying to keep them and then finally making the decision to let them go, you can simultaneously see this like really cool layer of narrative where she's also letting go of these emotional things that she's been holding on to. The perfectionism, the need to perform, being the good girl, trying to be perfect. It's almost like her relationship with her chest is like this, process of clearing everything that's in her heart that's like not meant to be there. And it's such a beautiful conversation. So yeah, let's just like pause and let me explain what we're about to get into. Okay. So you can be excited about this because this is such a good show. So Brianne Roberge is somebody who's been in my world for a while. She was a student in some of my programs in the past, and I was following her through this journey of getting her implants removed, and simultaneously I was having a surgery as well. And so we were like laying in bed DMing each other, like, what are you feeling? How's it going? What's coming up? And she went through a crazy experience, and as she started to share with me her process and her journey, I was like, I got to get this girl on the show. So I brought her here. Brianne Roberge, she's a writer, a podcaster, a host, a speaker. Her work began with one simple question that really changed everything for her. What if I could be the voice that I was searching for all those years ago? And that just gives me chills, because here she's going to be this voice, and hopefully somebody is that version of her searching for the validation or the healing or the answers. And you're going to get all of that in this show. She has spent her entire life chasing perfection, as we talked about this, identity of performance, even through her career in the medical world. She is just such a rock star of a hustler. She goes after what she wants, and also in this era, she's been really embracing minimalism, slowing down, de-influencing her world of messaging to just come into that humble place where she can be raw and honest and talk about healing trauma and taking responsibility for one's own self. So I love her journey. Her journey is very resonant to me, right? Pulling off those masks, breaking out of hustle culture, and just coming into this more soft, vulnerable, real place. And she is going to do that in our conversation today. So Brianne is on the show to talk about her journey of breast implant, breast explant, toxic overload in her body, the things she had to navigate, the way in which she explains it, how it layers with all of the emotional things that she was working through. Truly an incredible, incredible story. So, for more on Brianne Roberge, you can go to the show notes of this episode. We are going to have links to all of her magical medicine. You can check her out. She's currently actually launching a Substack for her writing to share more of her journey. And she also has a podcast called Go Regulate Yourself. And that is all about real, raw conversation of healing. Everything can be found in the show notes below, brianneroberge.com. And in the meantime, grab a bowl of popcorn, snuggle up with us because we got a juicy episode today. Enjoy this one, you guys. I can hear a calling. I can hear her calling me. Okay, so what's interesting about this conversation, I was thinking about this today. With every other podcast guest I've had, it's always been like, we're kind of co-creating and sharing personal experiences together. But with this one, I was like, I need popcorn and I need to be like, oh, what happened next? And then what happened next? Because the story that I got when we were DMing, like just the pieces of it, I'm like, holy shit, this is a crazy story. So first of all, thank you for being here. And second, I'm just so excited to hold a space for you to be able to share it all with the world.
Oh, thank you. I know that this is a story that's going to resonate with a lot of people, and my goal is to inspire. So hopefully it is a popcorn worthy episode.
Yeah, and I have a million questions because I've never gotten implants before. I never did that to my body. How old were you when you first got them?
So I got them 10 years ago. So I was about 22 when I made the decision and 23 when I actually had my surgery.
Wow. Wow. Okay. So you're like a young woman and you get these new boobs and like what was driving you? Can you tell me a little bit about the experience of that? Like what caused you to like want to do something like that? I'm an advocate of plastic surgery. We know I've had a couple of things done and I'm always here to share on that. Where were you that like caused you to want to get implants in the first place?
Are you cool if I walk this like way back to childhood? Because
Hell
there's
yeah,
some
girl.
things
Yeah,
that
it's like,
definitely are part of this conversation. So I think it's an important thing to, I guess, decipher right off the bat that I had a childhood that really bred a wound of unworthiness and not enoughness, as I'm sure a lot of us do as women in the conditioning and programming of not just how we're raised, but also societal impacts and influences. And so, right from the very moment that I was conceived, my mom had me when she was 17. My family treated her pregnancy as if I didn't exist. So, right from the get go, in the womb, there was this unspoken rule of like, I'm not worthy enough to be acknowledged. And her pregnancy was ignored until I actually came out into the world. My family has a lot of really manipulative and narcissistic tendencies amongst them. And so my whole childhood was really bred in this energy of good girls should be seen and not heard, and you are only there to give something to somebody. There was a lot of verbal and even physical abuse by my mom. And so I really learned from a young age that in order for me to get the things that I desired most in this world, like love, time, and attention, I had to give something of myself because I wasn't worthy or enough just being me. Stemming forward to when I was 9 years old, I was then sexually abused by my biological father. And I learned in this dynamic that my body is for somebody else. It's not mine to have in control. And I really started to sever from that feminine like connection to myself and my body at this point. From that point moving forward, there was a lot of different instances of bullying and things like that that occurred in my life where I had tons of comments be made about my body and people putting me down for one reason or another. I had a nickname in high school called Thunder Thighs and other things that kind of happened because of it. I also, because of my sexual abuse, became very promiscuous at a very young age. So I started drinking at the ages of 11 and 12 at bush parties and wanting to present myself in a way to attract men and be able to get that love and attention again that I never received for most of
Mm.
my life. So this is kind of a common theme and denominator that led me into my early adulthood. And once I reached the point of being a young adult, I actually got together with my now husband, who I wish I could have understood how much of a powerful force he was trying to be in those very early ages for me of our relationship, because in those first few years, I really struggled with intimacy. I struggled with the connection to myself. I struggled with our sex life and allowing him to see me for who I really was, and just being connected to him and loving myself and my body at the lowest self-esteem and poor body image you can possibly imagine. He really tried to be a strong force for me in that and help me see and gain confidence, but I just couldn't see it from his perspective
Mm.
because of all of the things that I had been through. So I decided that I was going to enroll in Miss Universe Canada pageant, which I'm here in Alberta.
Oh my God, I
And
didn't know this about you.
yeah, so I decided I was going to enroll in the pageant. This is actually the second time. I competed when I was like 17, fresh 18, and this is going to be the second time now with my husband, even though he was just my boyfriend at the time, fiance at the time. And I decided that this is going to be a thing, help me get my confidence. I'd start working with a pageant coach and work with a physical trainer, and I'd really be able to like step into my prime essentially. And so I started working out really hard in the gym, like 6, 7 days a week, giving it my all on a really restrictive diet. I can still remember the taste of the green lentils and the V8 shots that I was drinking and eating during this time.
Oh my
Awful.
God. Oh my God.
So I was really committed to this. And so it was about a year before the competition where I was working out and I was doing all these things to get prepared for it, because it takes a lot of dedication and just consistency to be able to be stage ready, or so I thought. And I'm starting to look through like pageant pictures and photos and look at the Miss Universe, pageant of who the winners are year after year, and I'm starting to notice a very distinct difference between those women and me, them all having beautiful chests and me having a very flat chest. And I said to myself, this is something that I think will help me feel more feminine, more connected to myself, help me love myself more, look in the mirror and actually like my appearance, because right now I don't enjoy putting on clothes. I don't think I'm going to look good in a bathing suit on the stage, and I just want to be more connected to myself in that way. So I told my husband that I wanted to, again, he was just my fiance at the time, and I told him that I wanted to go ahead with this surgery, and he tried to talk me out of it. He
He
didn't want me to have the
did.
implants. Yeah, he didn't want them. He didn't think I needed them, and obviously it was a very expensive surgery, a long recovery time and things like that involved in it too. But he loved me as I was, and he really didn't want me to have it. So I wish I would have listened, because there
I'm
was a
noticing a
long
pattern.
journey. Right? He has so much wisdom there that I wish I could have understood.
Yeah.
Um, but I went ahead. So I booked a bunch of consultations. I found a surgeon that I wanted to go ahead with, and I booked the surgery date. Now the surgery date ended up falling 1 month before the competition. So the competition was originally supposed to happen in 2015, May of 2015. And the surgery was booked just 1 month basically to the day of that competition. So I'm working out hard up until this point. And at the time, I'm a registered nurse. I'm working in the hospital bedside with my patients too. And I'm very much in this energy of like hustling and grinding and not taking any time off, right? And really like that performing type of energy again. And so I, right up until my surgery, was working out hard in the gym, went for the surgery. Everything went well for the initial surgery. I chose to get my implants above the muscle because I wanted that more perky breast look, right? Something that was going to look really good on stage and in my clothes and stuff like that. And surgery went really great. I loved, or so I thought, how I looked when I initially came out. But in that month between the surgery and that competition, something really big happened.
I was still working out in the gym. I couldn't lift anything. I wasn't supposed to lift more than 5 pounds, but I could do core workouts and I could do leg workouts and cardio. So why take time off to recover?
Oh my God, you didn't take a minute. You just jumped right in, huh?
Yeah,
Holy,
couldn't
wow.
sacrifice because what could happen for my body, right? Like I needed to be stage ready and have this presence about me. So I kept working out and I didn't take any time off work. I was on modified duties, but I was still in the hospital working bedside. And there would be times where I would go from the hospital on a break to the gym, work out, and then back to the hospital for my shift. And so this is happening for the month after the surgery. And so it's about 3 weeks at this point post-op. And I had went to the mall for the day, and I remember this so clearly because I went and got everything last minute that I needed for the competition itself. Our competition happens in our province of Ontario, which is like a good 5, 6 hour flight from where I am in Alberta. So it's a far distance away. So I had to have everything ready to go. So I was at the mall for the day. I was carrying all these bags, lifting everything, and I came home and my right side was really bothering me. And so I looked at it in the mirror and it's weeping a little bit and it's a little red, it's a little angry, and the pain is really significant. But nurses, being the worst patients, I tried to slough it off,
Yeah,
right?
you're like,
No
I'm
big deal.
good.
I carried a lot of bags. Like, it's just what I did today. It's gonna buff out. It's gonna be just fine. There was a little tiny voice inside of my head that said, Brianne, message your surgeon. And so I did. I sent a message to them and said, just, playing it down, just a heads up. There's a little redness, there's a little pain, there's a little weeping, but ultimately, like, I think I'm fine. My surgeon's assistant messaged me back and she said, can you send me pictures? And so I did. I sent them to her. 5 minutes later, I got a call from my surgeon that said, you need to come in for emergency surgery right now. And I
What?
was like, yeah. I said, excuse me? And she said, well, my surgeon said, it's clearly infected. There's like, I have to get in there and see what we're dealing with, but catch it before it gets even worse. So I'm not living in the city that my surgeon and my operation happened in. It's a good like 45 to an hour drive from where I am. And my husband, who again, fiance at the time, had to drive me for my appointment. He works an hour away from where I am right now. So, but the earliest I'm going to get in for surgery
Oh
is
my
like 3 hours
God.
from this point. So I called his work. I paged him on the overhead. He works at a plant and he picked up and obviously was in just as much shock as I was. Came home, took me into the hospital, and we met my surgeon there. And he says to me and my husband at the time, um, this is not something that happens often, but I am worried about what those pictures show. So, worst case scenario, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open you up. I'm going to pull the implant out, clean up the site, and then you might be on IV antibiotics for a week. So I'm doing the math in my head. eight
Oh
days
my
to the
God.
competition, I can still make it. I can still get on that stage.
You overachiever, you.
Yeah, not in the best way, but was really counting on this. So they take me in for surgery. I give Charles a kiss, and he goes out to the waiting room, and they put me under. I wake up in the recovery room, and my surgeon's standing at the foot of my bed, and he says, I don't know how to tell you this, but we had to take the implant out. And I was like, excuse me? This is even worst case scenario. We didn't even talk about this as being an option. What do you mean you had to take it
Wait,
out?
so you hold on, so you had one boob? Is that like what's
I
going
actually almost. So I guess what had happened was 5 minutes after he put me under, he went out to tell Charles that like the implant was so infected, the site was so bad that he had to take it out. And he asked him, what do you want to do with the other one? And thank God he made the choice to take it out because if he would have left me to, I think we would have got married.
Well, you know what? You did say that he was like very always trying to steer you in the right direction. So I
Yes.
think that was a good decision. Before you go further, I have just a couple of questions. Like, you know, as we go deeper into the story, because I know that there's so much more that continues to happen. And in this time period of your life, I just want to kind of anchor into like a look back opportunity. When you look back on all of this, like the little girl in you who wanted to change her body in order to feel better about herself, I'm curious if you look back on that and you see it in a certain way that maybe you didn't necessarily see it back then. Because, like for me, I changed my body so I could feel better about myself too. And I think that there's, and you might have a different opinion, but there's like a way to do it that's in right relation and a way that maybe
Mhm.
isn't in right relation. So I'm just curious, like when you look back, do you see it in a different way than maybe you did when you were experiencing all of that?
Absolutely, I do. I strongly believe, and what I've realized now on this side of the fence is there is always a right intention, or I don't like to use the word wrong intention, but really a less grounded intention of how you can do things. And when I made the decision to alter my body, when I made the decision to get implants, I wasn't doing so because I love my body and I know this is going to continue to make me feel good and I want to do that for that reason. It was because I looked in the mirror and I hated what I seen. I
Hmm.
hated everything about myself. There wasn't anything there that I truly loved in any capacity. I was taught that I wasn't enough. I was taught that I wasn't worthy. And the worst part is that I anchored into that and I believed that for my entire life. So my decision to get the implants was solely based in the not enoughness. It wasn't
Hmm.
because I was doing so to love myself further. I was doing so for the complete opposite and grounded variation of that. So a big
Hmm.
difference.
Yeah. And when you look back, do you feel, and don't give anything away because we still got popcorn number two with like the next chapter. But, and also when you look at this, do you see that like the things that were happening in physical response to the body were because of the intention, or do you think it was just kind of a coincidence that these difficult things continued to manifest, or do you see it as like the body alerting you, hey, like you're not in right relation here?
100%. I do not think anything happens coincidentally. I think everything does really happen for a reason. Everything is always guiding us to what is in right relation to our bodies, what is the right decision for us to make, and the intention in which we are doing that. And I think that the pebbles that I had been thrown in the very beginning stages, and I'll call even my husband's wisdom or his words of not wanting me to get the surgery or trying to help me see, my own confidence or have that self-esteem. Those were like pebbles being thrown of like, hey,
Mm,
look, you have somebody in your life who loves you for you. Like, can you love yourself for you? And I ignored the pebbles. And so this then became like a rock or a boulder that had been thrown. It was like, you really don't need these. Your body is rejecting them. There's a massive infection. Like, listen to your
mm.
system. And as we will soon find out, I did not listen to that
You're
either.
such a good storyteller. I like this is why I was so excited for this dialogue. Yeah, so continue. So they take both boobs out. Thank you. Implants would look
Yes.
so weird if it was just one. And you're in that you're woken up from surgery, you're getting this information. Yeah, tell me more. What happens next?
So, coming out of the hospital, now I have no boobs, and I'm going to be on IV antibiotics for 10 days, 4 times a day at the hospital.
Oh my
So,
God.
competition is out. I cannot compete because I cannot go. The surgeon actually told me, and what had ended up happening is I actually picked up a superbug working in the hospital as a nurse, which is called MRSA, which is really, really bad if anybody is not
Yeah,
familiar.
MRSA is really dangerous.
Yes, it is. The infection had spread so much that the surgeon said if I ignored it and I would have got on that plane to go to the competition, it would have killed me because it was right over top of my heart at that point. So, massive infection. That definitely was brewing probably for a lot longer than
Holy
I let
crap.
on to, but ended up being really intense with the recovery of the IV antibiotics and everything. So, I ended up having to pull out of the competition and delay it for a year from 2015 to 2016. And in that decision, there was also life things that became also complicated because you're not allowed to be married for the competition. It's called Miss Universe Canada for a reason. My husband and I were supposed to get married that December. We had to delay our wedding a year because of this as well. So there was life impacts that happened
Oh
too.
my God.
So, in coming home and the recovery portion, I had to wait 3 months to have the implants put back in. And when I got home from the original removal of them, I went and looked in the mirror. First thing they told me not to do, I went and did. I took the binder off and I looked at my chest in the mirror. And I still remember shrieking. My husband was in another room. He came running in and I like did up the binder. I was left with like these little tiny like deflated sacks that had nothing in them. And I was mortified. The very thing that I had gotten to feel more connected to myself and love my image more ended up ultimately leading to worse than before. So that 3 months over the summer, I didn't take my shirt off. My husband never seen me without a shirt. I wasn't in a bathing suit, nothing, because I was so devastated by the state of my chest. And I counted down the days until that September when I could have those implants put back in. Now, because of the complications of the original surgery, I was unable to go over the muscle. I had to go underneath the muscle for my next surgery. And when they did that, because of all the scar tissue and everything that had built up from the infection itself, my implant didn't drop. So I had a left breast that looked normal with the implant and a right one where the implant was kind of like up in my chest. So you could see the difference of the implants. So I had the original surgery, I had the emergency removal. I waited 3 months to have them put back in. And over the course of the next 2 years, I had an additional three reconstructive surgeries and a liposuction surgery just to get the implant to drop and to look normal in my chest. So 7 surgeries in the course of 2 years, which is a lot.
That's a lot on
Now,
the
when I went,
body.
mhm, when I went to the competition that following year in 2016, I felt amazing on stage. I felt like I looked great, but my implant didn't drop at that point. So you'll see all my photos of my bikini. I have my hair like pinned over top of this side because it's hiding the breast that is sitting up in my chest for the competition. So I was like that for that. I was like that for my wedding and kept insisting that the implants are something that I wanted to keep as part of this journey. So this was like a big, big boulder, again, that I ignored. 7 boulders, if you will, that I ignored. And I wish I could say that it stopped there, but it did. It didn't.
Oh my God.
So a couple of years after all of this is said and done, and my chest is looking somewhat normal, I'm starting to realize, first of all, that I don't love the implants as much as I thought I would. Dressing was a really difficult thing because it always felt like my boobs were out there front and center. I had to really pay attention to the types of clothes that I was wearing and wear things that were more tight fitted than I would like to, because if I didn't, then it looked like I was, 50 pounds heavier than I was, the way the material would hang. And I really felt like I was like fake in the energy that I was showing up in because of the implants and the disconnect that was deepening, the division that was getting bigger from me and myself in this journey. So that's happening on one side of the fence. And then I started to have some health stuff that became unexplainable in some ways. So I was really in the holistic health space at this time. I was aware of taking care of myself and doing everything I could to be quote unquote healthy. And yet I was still having some really annoying, persisting problems that were taking over my life, like brain fog, muscle pains, and joints. I was having insomnia. My hair started to fall out. My skin got really dry. I actually ended up with cystic acne, like the size of your thumbnail, all over my face, like
Oh
15 at
wow.
a time. I had this weird rash on my thigh that I went to doctors and dermatologists for, and nobody could figure out what it was. It would come and it would go. Just so many different things that were unexplainable. And it didn't make sense. I would go to doctors, they wouldn't be able to figure it out. They'd want to put me on medication. I was doing everything right in my life. I had done all the intolerance testing and was eating really clean and just, I was really conscious of all these things, and it didn't make any sense. So this, keep in mind, is about 2019. Still really early for the discussion on breast implant illness. Now, right now, it's hard to find information, but back then, even, we're only talking like 6 years ago, but realistically, there was really nothing that you could find on this.
Yeah.
So
And really
it,
quick though on this, just to ask, because I think this is a question that people might have. You have now done a lot of research on the other side. And just to pause here and ask, what types of implants did you have? And
Mhm.
does breast implant illness decipher between those types of implants? Because there's like silicone, there's like a bag that can maybe pop. Like what? Yeah, tell me, give me information on that just for people who are listening if you can.
Absolutely. So my implants are silicone, and the brand name of mine were Allergen, which is like Allgeran. There's lots of different types of brands out there for breast implant illness, or sort of breast implants in general. And then outside of silicone, there also is saline, and then they also have what is called like a gummy bear type of implant, which basically, if you cut it open, looks like a gummy bear. So really when it comes to breast implant illness, it doesn't matter what type you have.
Mm,
Something foreign in your body can cause a reaction and oftentimes thousands of different symptoms that are otherwise unexplainable. And it's a really hard time right now to find a doctor that is willing to, I guess, acknowledge that breast implants can be a problem.
mm.
Obviously, now it's starting to be more talked about, but still, there's a lot of people out there that want to gaslight you and try to convince you that implants couldn't possibly be causing these kind of problems.
Yeah, I
Now, I know,
experienced
like,
that too. The the fact like that they're in your body for a while and then time passes and things build up
mhm.
over time. But continue, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, no, not at all. I was just gonna say, like, you're in the States and I'm in Canada. And so depending on the country will also depend on what you're going to be able to figure out and how you're going to be able to figure it out. So as an example, Canada is the only G7 country that does not have a breast implant registry, which means if implants are recalled or there is a problem, you do not know unless you happen to stumble upon the information yourself. You are not notified by your surgeon. They will not know. You will not know unless you happen to know what types of implants you have, what the serial numbers are, and if you find the information yourself.
That is creepy. So you're putting a foreign object in your body, and there is no way to track whether or not that type of model, make, manufacturer, if there was any type of, that's scary. That's really the
It
only
is.
country in the G7. That's pretty shocking to me. Wow.
Yeah.
Oof.
I was absolutely shocked when I found out. And it's terrifying. You think about when you have a vehicle, right? And obviously bodies and vehicles are two totally different things, but if you have a part that is recalled on your
Oh,
vehicle,
you
you're
find
getting a
out.
letter in the mail, yeah, to tell you. So now you have something inside of your body and you have no idea what is going on.
Scary.
That is terrifying.
Yeah.
And I wish I would have known that prior to getting implants too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm happy that we have the opportunity to talk about it because I think for a lot of women, when they start to experience these symptoms and they start to communicate these symptoms, they are immediately dismissed. So,
Hmm.
to be able to even feel that validation if somebody's listening and going, oh my God, this happened to me, or I think I have this happening to me. So it's, a lot of us were sharing information through the power of social media with our own experiences. I'm wondering, in your experience, were you going to doctors to say that it was the implants and getting rejected, getting cut off? What was that like when you started to connect that dot? So, if you're on a journey right now of healing your own chronic health conditions, you're trying to take better care of your body, you're trying to heal the emotional wounds that are associated with whatever chronic symptom you might be having, this is something I navigated with such a desire to heal and such a frustration that I didn't have the resources I really wanted to have. That's why years ago I created a course called Chronic Freedom. It's a 21-part audio program where I walk you through all of the logistical things I did to heal my body, and also the psychological and spiritual understanding of how to move the energy when all of your trauma is coming up and the chronic frequencies of inflammation, burnout, brain fog are just getting in the way. This program has helped hundreds of students, and while it's not something that's uniquely individually available in my course shop, it is a course that lives inside of the Magic app. You guys know we've been talking a lot about the Magic app. It is available on Android as well as on iPhone, and it offers you every single course I've ever created in a really interactive way. There are community features, live challenges, and when you join, you get access to every single course at a low monthly fee. Yes, everything I've ever created is inside of that app. So to grab this resource and start diving into the Chronic Freedom Program, all you have to do is go to laurenoflove.com/app. This program has helped hundreds of women, and I'm so excited to share it with you. And I hope it helps you grow, expand, and heal, because healing is your birthright. So to check it out, laurenoflove.com/app.
You feel like you're crazy, quite honestly, because you're going to the professionals of this industry that you would hope and would think would have all of the information to be able to guide you in a way that would help support you. And I was like, basically felt like one door was closing on me after another. Every single person that I would talk to would slough it off, would gaslight me, would make me feel like I'm making things up, or that I somehow have caused these problems in my life in another way, something that I'm not doing, again, good enough to be able to heal my body. And so for about, I would say, 2 to 3 years was this cycle of going to doctors, bringing it up, being shut down, doing research on my own, struggling to find information. And what I ended up ultimately finding out is that my implants actually were part of a recall notice, and a class action lawsuit had been going on. It started in, I think, 2020. Don't quote me, that could be the wrong year, but a class action lawsuit actually did start in regards to this, and not just my implants, but like several big brands and types of implants had been part of this class action. And again, no knowledge whatsoever. I had even contacted my original surgeon, and he basically told me, oh, it was no big deal, nothing to worry about. And, you know, if my symptoms weren't putting me in the hospital, then I didn't really have anything to complain about, essentially. You know, my implants hadn't ruptured, so it wasn't that serious. So it was devastating in a large sense. And I definitely felt like I couldn't trust myself again in this process, because everybody else outside of me was telling me that I was wrong. And, you know, not to say anything against my husband either, because again, he's had such amazing wisdom in this space, but we're very conditioned to believe those that hold this knowledge of the medical system would know best. And so when I kept continually getting shut down by other people, he would ask me too, like, do you really think it is the implants? Not out of like judging or like telling me I'm wrong, but like out of his curiosity, like, could it be something else? And so now I have literally every person outside of me, intentionally or not, making me feel like I am on the wrong path. And so it was a very challenging place to be put in, for sure.
Mm. The thing that's interesting about this is I'm hearing you talk, it's almost like I always look for like the healing metaphors of things, right? And so as somebody who also, you know, had sexual trauma in my own history, right? I can see that when we're severed off from the journey of trusting ourselves, and we go through these experiences where we're disconnected from our body and we're told to reject our body's internal cues and impulses and knowings, it almost feels like, again, in my experience, we come to these adult life manifestations that are so perfectly orchestrated to bring up all of the same emotional responses within us, so that we actually like rewrite that field, if you will, and like reclaim the fact that like, no, when my body says something, I listen to it. My body's telling me these implants are an issue. Did you have a big kind of wake up, come to Jesus on that, where suddenly it was like, oh my God, you got all the validation? Was there a moment, or was it tiny little steps of reclamation? And what would you say for somebody who's going through an experience like that?
So I would say for me, and I got goosebumps head to toe as you were asking that question, it was a combination of both. I think that all of these things, right from the very moment when I decided that I was going to get these implants, I think there was a lot of little clues coming in that were settling into my subconscious and starting to open my eyes that there might be another possibility here, a way to love myself, trust myself, be connected to myself without needing to have something in my body. But after a couple of years, so we're sitting at about 2021 at this point, I did have a moment where I was sitting down and I remember I was staring out at the ocean because we were traveling at this point. We had started taking off 6 months a year to go abroad. And I was sitting there and I was staring out at the ocean and I was wearing my bathing suit top. And I just remember looking down at my chest and craving having a small, itty bitty, titty chest and being able to love myself in that space. And that voice inside of my head was so quiet, so clear, so crisp, and it just said, "It's time, Brianne." And so I knew in that moment that I wanted to get my implants removed, but I didn't really tell anybody else in my life about until a year and a half later than that. And I was at my friend's house. My husband and I were sitting outside. It was just me and him, and then she came out eventually. And I was drinking wine and I was, in that little bit of a buzz state where we have some more confidence. And I blurted it out to my husband and to my friend. I was like, I want to get my implants out of my chest. And I was just bawling at this point. And both of them were in shock and they're like, well, this is like, a thing that you decided to do and all the reasons that you wanted to do them. And are you sure? And it was like a lot of questions, not from a place of judgment, but like a place of they seen and remembered when those implants first came out and how devastated I was for those 3 months of like checking in with my mental health. Are you okay? Are you going to be okay with this decision? And so this point now it's about 2022. I had some things happen in life that put me into a financial position. I was not able to get my implants removed because you have to pay for it. It doesn't matter if you're having health issues or not, you have to pay for them out of pocket to have the explant done. And it was $10,000, just not an option. So I had to go 3 years, 2.5 years of waiting. And during this time, I was still doing consultations and figuring out who was going to go with my explant surgeon and doing research and things like that. Um, but I ended up ultimately getting to the point at the beginning of last year, 2025, where the symptoms that I was having now progressed to sharp shooting pains in my breast and under my armpit, swelling, like a burning sensation, and lumps starting to form in my breast. So it started on the left and then very minorly moved over to the right. And after having went through now a repetitive process of going in to see doctors and them doing tests and not finding anything and turning me away, there was no rupture, there was no cancerous lumps, it was all, benign or tissue or whatever. I got to this point where it was so bad with the pain that I considered going into the emergency department because I didn't know what else to do. I was like having hot water bottles all over my chest, and I was like, that's it. Somehow, some way, by the end of 2025, I'm getting my freaking implants out. Again, still in a financial position that maybe is not going to be the best option or have easiest journey figuring that out, but I made a decision, and this would have been about like May, June of last year of this happening. And so once that decision was made, I found out shortly afterwards the pain that I was having was a condition called capsular contracture, which is basically when the scar tissue around your implants shrinks and hardens, and so it causes pain when that's occurring. And it will come and go because it'll shrink and harden, and then it'll be at that position for a while, and then it'll shrink and harden, and that's when the pain comes on, so on and so forth. So I knew which surgeon that I was going to go for my surgery with, and I had been on a wait list with him to have the surgery done. And it was October 22nd or 23rd of last fall. And I got a call from the surgeon's office saying, you made it to the top of the wait list. A date has opened up for November 18th. Do you want it? So, like, less than a month away. And everything my body said, yep, this is right. This is the date. Go ahead with it. And so I said yes to the surgery date, not even knowing how the financial part of this was going to come around to be able to pay
Wow.
for it. And luckily, the universe, having been on my side since the very beginning, and I'm sure, was just waiting for me to make this decision, ended up ultimately helping me find an avenue with a loan to be able to get my surgery done. But honestly, when I look at this, like I said, it's a combination of like the quiet moments, but also like that realization that just set in. For those 3 years since I made the decision before the explant happened, craved being my own body, craved being myself. But during that time, I chose not to step into hating my body with implants. I chose to step into loving my body with implants because I knew
Mm,
that if I had made the decision to get the implants from hating my body, if I made the decision to remove them in the energy of hating my body, it would not go well.
wow. Wow.
So, yeah.
What did you do for that? That's this, so this is a really interesting point because a lot of people, when we talk about manifestation and, shifting paradigms and making change, a lot of people fall into that kind of rabbit hole of I have to force myself to change. I have to hate where I am so much now and make it so uncomfortable that I take a massive action to get out of that pain. But what you're saying is so profound. It's this really, really deep rewrite. What did you do to actually come into a loving relationship with the body as it was, knowing that deep down you also wanted to change it?
I think for a lot of us, when we talk about taking action, because I know I did this for most of my healing journey, where I did all the things, right? I meditated and I did, the journaling and I did all these action steps, but I never really allowed that to go beyond like the surface level. It's like I'm doing the personal development over here, but we're not actually touching on the fears that are like running the show below that. And when I talk about like what I did during this time, like I did a lot of that. I did a lot of meditating and a lot of just envisioning what it would be like to have this small chest, but also like loving myself with my chest. I did a lot of journaling, a lot of hypnosis and different action steps. But it's not so much the things that I did that mattered, it's the intention that I was doing them with. Because as you said, I wanted to change something, but I wanted to do so from a place of love. And so for me, a lot of that was actually in inner child healing and connecting with the other versions of me and the different experiences and what I had went through. So I did a lot of connection with the younger version of me right from the womb state where I was taught that I wasn't worthy and I wasn't enough. And I brought her into a circle with a version of me that also decided to get the implants when the competition was happening. And I would sit in circle and be able to connect with both of them and really kind of reparent or reheal from that deep level of recognizing my worth and recognizing that it doesn't matter if I have implants or not. It doesn't matter if I have blonde hair or brown hair. It doesn't matter if I have this career or that career. There is nothing that I can do to be more worthy than I am right now in this moment. Nothing that I can do to be more lovable than I am right now in this moment. I always have been and always will be worthy. And I think that's where a lot of us miss that connection because we think that we have to do something. We have to change ourselves. We have to say things in a particular way or show up in a particular way to be lovable, to be worthy, to be enough. And the truth of the matter is that you always have been, you always will be, and there is nothing that you can do to change that. It's not like when we come through the womb, we're getting stamped with a percentage of like you're 78% worthy or 62% worthy. Like that doesn't exist. You just are,
Mm-hmm.
and that is it. There's not an are or aren't, you are. And that is what I had to really do is I had to sink into that intention and rewrite those fears, those beliefs that I held from such a young age of believing that I had that. And now my whole world has shifted because of it, not just on a physical level of loving my body in that way, but also in regards to life, because I've walked away from my nursing career, I've walked away from coaching, I'm doing the very thing that I wanted to do my entire life, which is writing and, speaking and podcasting and that sort of thing. But I wouldn't have been able to find the courage to do this or to have a voice in any area of my life had I not recognized this
Mm.
belief.
Yeah, the body, I think how we treat the body and what the body holds on to, I feel like, yeah, the way you describe that is so perfect. Like, we cannot actually manifest this world externally if the internal dynamic of self to body is disjointed or kind of
Mhm.
carrying aspects of disconnect. And I'm a really big advocate of inner child and inner teenager work so deeply in my own life. It's so important to changing your actual life direction when we go backwards to actually revisit, reparent, repair, reprogram. So I love hearing that all of those things came through first, not needing I'll do that once I have, the
Mhm.
body, then I'll start to do all of the backpedaling, looking at all those things. It's almost like those healing those other parts of you kind of opened the doorway for the opportunity to say, okay, now you're ready to let these go. What a spiritual experience, dude. Like,
It was. It was. It
oh
was
my God.
wild. In fact, even when I was getting put under for my explant, so my eighth and hopefully final surgery, I was on the table and you're laying there and they're putting stuff into your veins and getting you hooked up to the oxygen and you're counting down
Mm-hmm.
to go under. I actually had this like I can't even describe it, meditative experience where both that inner child and that version of me that chose to have the surgery were there. We were in union, we were holding hands, and it was like, we're ready to let these go. And like, we're just loving
Oh
all of
my
this.
God. I
And
just got
so
chills.
it
Oof.
was amazing. It was, I think, the most beautiful thing I could have possibly imagined. And despite like the explant recovery, it was hard as fuck. Not gonna lie, it was a very challenging thing. Despite all of that, this is the best decision that I have ever made in my life, and I am so incredibly grateful for that.
Yeah, it's really incredible to see the way that you glow on the other side. Because I know we definitely have had connection prior to this decision to remove them, but like even your eyes look clearer, your frequency looks and feels much more peaceful. You're like really super grounded. Did you feel a release of all of those symptoms? I mean, I know you had a difficult recovery from the explant surgery, but did the relief of all of those symptoms happen pretty rapidly or did it take time? What do you consider when you look back on that?
Yeah, it was wild. Instantaneous relief. From the moment that I opened my eyes in recovery to that first couple of hours afterwards when I got home, my eyes were whiter than they had ever been in my life. My skin was glowing. And I had this, like, it was almost felt like a veil had been lifted of the brain fog that I had been carrying for 10 years. I had a mental clarity unlike anything I have ever experienced, which has only continued to get stronger since the explant itself. Because now I'm sitting at just over 2 months post-op. Um, there was this instantaneous relief. And so since then, I have not had a single pimple or cyst. My muscle and joint pain is completely gone. My hair is healthier than it has ever been. That rash is completely gone. I'm sleeping through the night. Everything was like instantaneously healed. Now, my recovery, yes, was hard. My recovery was hard for a different reason because my body actually rejected one of the drains that I had. So I had an infection that had started because of that. So that part was really challenging and difficult. But the symptoms that I had had for years weren't a part of that conversation. The inflammation, like, basically disappeared the moment that the implants came out.
Wow. I've heard that from a lot of women that the minute that they get them out, they feel instantaneous relief. How is it
Mhm.
that doctors don't create a correlation to that? What's going on, dude? Like,
Right? Can't be more clear than that. Pretty obvious sign, but I think it also is something important to note for the listeners here. If anybody does have implants and they're looking at getting an explant, and you are somebody that's maybe struggling with symptoms or maybe hadn't put those two things together, there are different variations of an explant that I think that you need to be aware of.
Oh,
So
yeah.
if you are experiencing like symptoms or you're looking to get your implants out and make sure that you don't have any continuation of health related problems, you need to get what is called a total en bloc capsulectomy. So what that basically means is they're taking out the entire scar tissue capsule that surrounds the implants with the implants when they take them out. And this is important because anything that has leaked or rubbed off the implants or anything like that can still be contained within that capsule. So if you're only taking out the implants, you have a potential of symptoms continuing to follow you for the rest of your life. So it's important to get that capsule actually removed as well.
Is that kind of a concern for women involving like the size of the breast once we take that out because all of that scar tissue, the whole capsule, right? Like, did you have conversations with doctors where they were like, well, we should do this to counteract, or you're gonna feel this way after? What was that process like?
So I had met with quite a few surgeons when I was trying to figure out who to go through for my explant. One of the surgeons that I did not choose to go with for this reason suggested that I be awake during the procedure. They do local anesthetic and just cut me open and pop out just the implant, and that be enough. And I was like, okay, obviously you know nothing about breast implant illness because you would never even suggest that if you had known. So there are going to be doctors out there or surgeons out there that do not know anything of this world. I do not recommend that type of procedure. I've heard from other women where they've had the implant be cut, all this like saline drained out, and then they just pull the bag out and leave everything else in. Again, definitely not recommended, especially if you are somebody that's struggling with symptoms. So when I chose my surgeon out of all the ones I had met with, he was the only one that acknowledged breast implant illness as a real thing, took time to hear my concerns and walk me through what my expectations were. My consultation with him was the longest. He answered all of the questions, and I was visibly upset when I went in. Obviously, I had a very traumatic insertion process, and he took his time to walk through everything with such a deep level of detail. And I actually thought that I was going to go ahead and get like a breast lift or something at the same time because the look of it was concerning a little bit. And he actually said to me, you know, you're young, you have great elasticity in your skins, being only 30, well, I'm 33 now at this point, but when I did the consultations, I was a little bit younger. But he's like, you're still quite young, and your skin's going to bounce back. It takes about a year, really, for your breasts to fluff up beyond the explant itself. So he's like, I don't recommend you spend the extra money and have the extra recovery and all of the things that it's going to entail. I recommend that you just do the surgery itself, and then if you're not happy in a year, you can revisit, and it's not going to cost you, you know, any really additional more money to get the lift at that point. But he actually talked me out of spending additional money or, you know, going through that process. So I say, like, if you're finding your surgeon, like, really make sure it's somebody you're comfortable with, somebody that's not rushing you, that's going to answer your questions and do all of those things. But depending on what your breasts look like before surgery is definitely going to influence what they look like after the surgery. Because now I'm somebody who's had, you know, 6 or 7 surgeries on the right side. So my look, my chest is very flat right now, which I absolutely just love and adore. I love the way my chest looks, but there is a significant difference between my left and my right because my right is more concave with all of the
Mm.
surgeries that I had, whereas my left is like a fluffier little breast. The right is very concave in nature. So although they're the same size, they look very different because of all of the operations and things that I had before. So I think it's important to have those expectations, but note that it can take a year for that final result to really be visible.
Hmm. So, what would you say to somebody who is going on this journey where they've listened to this whole beautiful story, which thank you, Brian. I love the fact that you've showed up to be so detailed and so specific about all the different elements of this path. It's such good medicine for anybody who's listening who relates. And if they do, you know, looking back on all this, do you have message? Do you have thought? Do you have feeling? Things that you feel like they should really know, either like strategically, logistically, or just emotionally about this experience, what would you say to that person?
I would definitely say on the emotional side or even like the spiritual side, if you are somebody who's considering anything for your body, I don't care if it's Botox or it's a surgical operation, anything that you might be considering, I want you to sit with it and actually see what the intention is behind the reason why you're getting it. If it's to change, if it's because I don't like, if it's because I hate, then maybe, just maybe, there's a little bit more work to do there before you go ahead with that specific treatment, protocol, surgery, whatever it might be. I'm definitely not against doing things to love our bodies and feel good in our bodies and, rock whatever it is that we want to rock. But I think it is really important that we are aware of the intentions that we're choosing to do things. And the intention of hate, the intention of change for that reason, is never one that's going to lead us down a path of being happy and feeling good or enough. And I think that's the biggest piece of advice that I can offer your listeners is really just tuning in to see where they actually sit in regards to those decisions.
I mean, such a good conversation, right? Like, what? That was so juicy. I feel like I learned so much about myself just hearing her talk and share. And, that really gives me pause to reflect on my gratitude for this show because every single time a guest comes in to share their story, to open up, to be real, I just feel like the name of the show is so true. Like, oh, the world really does need your medicine. Like, it's just ringing through and through with every single guest. That beautiful reminder of how important our stories are, how powerful our vulnerability can be, and how true legacy is formed simply through the act of being open. And I'm really grateful. I'm really grateful that we've had the opportunity to do that thus far on the show. I hope you've been enjoying the conversations. Before you go anywhere, I just want to mention really quickly there is an episode around this one, either before or after, I haven't decided yet, where I'm going to be sharing my own story of my relationship with plastic surgery in general. As you guys may or may not know, I went on a really beautiful healing journey with my body. I could say over the last 2 years, but quite frankly, it was like a 15-year journey to heal. And when I did that, I had a lot of extra skin on my body, losing 70 pounds. And so I made the decision to get a mommy makeover, literally like the mother of my own self. And I got a breast augmentation, removal of skin. I also got removal of skin on my stomach as well, getting the diastasis recti that I had in my stomach. My muscles were split. I got that sewn back up. And, I'm not a mom, but I feel like mommy makeover was appropriate because I was birthing this whole new version of myself. And my surgery experience was very different than Brianne's in the sense that what I did and what I chose to do for my body to me was about letting go of something in that surgery. So maybe actually like the same as Brianne when she got her explant surgery done. It was the decision to remove all of this extra skin and all of this extra weight that I had been holding onto energetically through my skin. And I'm going to record an episode about that. So you can check that out on the show. And before you go anywhere, I would just love to ask if you have some time, can you please leave a review on the show? It would mean so much to me because every time an episode is getting 5 stars and some cool comments, it lets us know what you guys really are loving on the show. And it reminds us of what types of conversations we want to do more of. And that's like the only best way for me to communicate with you guys is to see what is really truly resonating. So if you loved this episode, leave 5 stars and reference the show, say what you love. If you're on Spotify, you can comment on the actual episode. And if you're on iTunes, you can actually just leave a heartfelt review on the show. So please do so if you have some time. And then the final thing to mention is that anytime you have a desire for a particular episode, you can actually send us an email. So you can send a note to press@laurenoflove.com, and that will be available to you guys anytime. So if you have a thought, a feeling, something you would like to know about, you can go ahead and send us an email. We keep a running list of topics that you guys send through, and we're covering them all within the 2026 year. So press at laurenoflove.com. Go ahead and leave that review, and thank you so much for being here. I'll see you guys soon.
The World Needs Your Medicine podcast was produced by Dana Wilcher, edited by Emily Aston, music by Malka Russell, and recorded by me, Lauren Eliz Love. For more about the show, you can visit us on Instagram at The World Needs Your Medicine, or you can go to theworldneedsyourmedicine.com. For any press tips or ideas, you can send an email to press@laurenoflove.com.